The following is a Shaw TV Public Affairs presentation. Constituency Report is produced as a public service by members of the BC Legislature through the facilities of Shaw TV.
Welcome to Constituency Report. My name is Judy Feinstein, and I'm here with Andrew Weaver, the MLA for Oak Bay Gordon Head and the leader of the BC Green Party. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Judy.
On March 8th, our first question is with respect to Bill M205, the Post-Secondary Sexual Violence Policies Act in the legislature. What was the purpose of this bill?
The goal of this bill was to ensure that campuses and post-secondary institutions across British Columbia have formal policies in place to deal with cases of sexualized violence on their campuses. Right now in British Columbia, we've heard a lot of examples of particular issues making it into the news, and there's a potpourri of policies or not in various campuses. There's a preponderance of issues that need to be dealt with, and there's a tendency for underreporting in light of the fact that post-secondary institutions want to be perceived as safe places for students to conduct their educational studies. So the purpose of this bill came from a discussion with staff and consultation with others, was based on Ontario's legislation, and it was designed to ensure that universities have sexualized violence policies in place, that they're required to report incidents to both their board and the minister, and that there's an education component and students involved in the development of these policies.
Mm-hmm. And on March 17th, you rose in the legislature during question period to ask the Premier whether or not she supports the need for sexual assault policy legislation. And you were very pleased with the Premier's response. We have a video clip of your question and the response.
Member for Oak Bay, Gordon Head.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, last Tuesday, the Premier told AM 1130 that she acknowledged more needs to be done to support the survivors of sexual assault on BC post-secondary campuses. The Premier stated, and I quote, "Rape kits need to be available, trained staff need to be available, and some universities and colleges are doing a more thorough job than others. So the Minister of Health is going to go out and have that conversation because we have to make sure that help is available," end quote. Honourable Speaker, I fear that the Premier may have missed the larger point about the conversation we need to have. And with respect and through you to the Premier, Honourable Speaker, we don't just need more rape kits. We need to take this issue head on, recognize that our post-secondary campuses aren't always providing a safe environment for BC students, and we need to have a plan in place to prevent assaults from happening in the first instance. Honourable Speaker, when the University of Ottawa surveyed its student body last year, it found that 44% of female students experienced sexual violence or unwanted sexual touching while attending the university. I'm asking the government to take a clear leadership role and make a clear statement that this is a responsibility they will act upon. Honourable Speaker, through you to the Premier, does she support the need for sexual assault policy legislation for post-secondary institutions?
Madam Premier.
Being raped is one of the worst things that can happen to any woman. And whether that is intimate partner assault, whether that's sexual abuse at the hands of a family member, or whether it's an assault from a stranger. And any woman who has experienced it will tell you it leaves a lifetime of scars. We hope that for women who are raped, that they can find a way to heal, and many do. Some will say they became stronger as a result. But all women who have been sexually assaulted are changed. And it's something that should not be happening in our society. Sadly, it appears to be more prevalent on university campuses than most other places in our society. There is more that we can do and more that we should do. The Minister of Advanced Education has begun that work. I certainly welcome the interest of the member from Oak Bay. I've had a chance to look at his bill, Bill 205, and I'd certainly look forward to working with him on finding a way that we can either pass this bill or amend it and pass a similar version to it in our legislature. We need to do more to protect women on campus from sexual assault, because these life-changing traumatic events don't need to happen. And as a society, we can and we must do more to prevent them.
And Andrew, you've had an opportunity to meet with the Minister of Advanced Education about this private member's bill. And what was the result of that meeting?
That's correct. The day after the Premier said she would introduce this bill, I met with the Minister of Advanced Education. He had tasked legislative drafters to look at the legislation to see whether they'll pass it as is or whether it needs some amendments to make it consistent with other pieces of legislation in BC. I had a subsequent meeting with the Minister, and it looks like it's going to happen this session, that the government has risen to this. They've initiated a campaign as well to bring awareness, and I'm very pleased at the way they've dealt with this.
And our second question is with respect to the Shawnigan Lake ruling. What does the recent BC Supreme Court ruling mean with respect to the contaminated soil dump at Shawnigan Lake? Has the company had to cease operations?
Yeah, what happened is the CVRD took the company essentially to court to say that this is not an allowable use under the zoning of the CVRD bylaws. And they won that case, and it's been taken to appeal, and the appeal has been heard. And as of right now, I don't know the result of the appeal ruling. This isn't the end, of course, because the ministry can actually override and change the zoning bylaw themselves through a Lieutenant Governor and Council order, number one. And number two is there is still potential another lawsuit down the road that still has to be looked at as well.
And that is the judicial review?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And the third question, in February 2016, you offered a number of practical steps that government could take to address Vancouver's growing affordability and speculation in the housing market. This is an issue you've been raising for quite some time. We have a video clip from Question Period where you ask questions to the Finance Minister on the real estate regulations.
Honourable Speaker, for more than 2 years now I've been raising the issue of affordability and speculation in the housing market. There are at least three dimensions to this. One, incentivize government speculation. Two, a preponderance of vacant homes. And three, non-enforcement of illegal realtor transactions. I just reintroduced a bill to amend the Land Title Act, thereby providing government with access to critical information needed to understand who is actually buying properties in our province. Government inaction, Honourable Speaker, plays a substantive role in fostering speculation. The bare trust loophole that I've raised several times in this House for several years allows wealthy individuals and corporations to avoid registering at the Land Title Office and so avoid paying BC's property transfer tax. Will the Minister from Advanced Education clearly does not understand fundamental real estate, or he would actually understand here a little bit more about where I'm going with this. Will the Minister of Finance introduce legislation to close the loophole that we are the only province in the country that still allows to exist by following the lead of Ontario to actually apply the property transfer tax upon change in beneficial ownership instead of change in title? And if not, why not? And the Minister of Advanced Education, Honourable Speaker, should know better than to actually pretend this is not an issue in British Columbia. Because it is, because, Honourable Speaker, I speak to real estate developers, I have spoken to mortgage lenders, and I know that this loophole is being used in British Columbia for speculative purposes and to avoid paying property transfer tax.
Minister of Finance.
Thanks, and to the member, Honourable Speaker. I think there are two issues, and to be fair, the member has raised them at various times, and today used another tool of the legislature to highlight one of them, the collection of information. I'm going to be a little cautious about what I say today, except one, to acknowledge that the unregistered transferring of interests in real property in British Columbia does have an impact. It also does have an impact on the amount of property transfer tax and the mechanism by which we collect property transfer tax. I am cautiously optimistic that when the member has an opportunity to see some of the provisions of the budget that will be tabled on Tuesday of next week, that he will find at least some aspects of that document to find favor with, and that will respond to some of the concerns that he's outlined today.
And what steps has government taken, and do you feel the government has gone far enough to prevent speculation in the market?
With respect to the Bear Trust, they have, rather than close the loophole, which is what I've been requesting, they have in the budget added a requirement now that information be collected as to who is involved in the Bear Trust sales and transfers. So that's a collection of information. In addition, what they've also done, again, this is something that I brought in through private members' bill, and I'm grateful that they've done this, is they've now added a requirement in when you buy a property in British Columbia, that if it's a foreign purchaser of that property, that the country of origin of that purchaser be listed and recorded. So the government's approach has been to collect more information. So that collecting information is good, but it has not addressed the problem. The problem, as I outlined in the video, was threefold. Number one, we're not actually enforcing the Real Estate Services Act to the extent that it needs to be. I think government needs to ensure that that's happening. Number two, we need to deal with the incentivized speculation through closure of the Bear Trust loophole, not only collecting the information, but closing it as they did in Ontario by making sure that property transfer tax is applied at transfer of beneficial ownership, not transfer of title. And the third thing is there's a preponderance of vacant homes, and what we need to be doing is ensuring that the people who leave homes vacant as part of speculation pay the social cost of that. There is a social cost to vacant homes. The social cost is increased price of renting, lack of affordability, homelessness. So internalizing externalities of the increased preponderance of vacant homes should be addressed by those vacant home owners, and there should be a price to that, and that price should be revenue neutral and used in a means and ways to actually address the issue of homelessness and affordability in the region.
Yes. And finally, our question before we take a break is with respect to a recent trip to Kamloops. You had a tour of the proposed Ajax mine and attended a public meeting. What issues were raised with respect to concerns of the local residents about Ajax mine?
That's right. I went to Kamloops to visit TELUS Data Distribution Centre, to talk to local people about the issues there, but also to take a tour of the Ajax mine. Now, I actually had two tours of the Ajax mine. The first tour was given to me by the company, where I went on site and I was able to explore the scale of the mine and what was being proposed. The second tour was with local environmental organizers and people who were opposed to the mine. So I was there with an open mind to actually get a sense of what the issues are. The mine, and later on Friday evening, there was a public forum put forward by the City of Kamloops wherein they presented the results of an independent contractor who paid for by the proponent, but contracted by the city, where the contractor explored the environmental assessments submission of the proponent and did a critique of it. It was a very thorough, very fair, very reasonable critique that left left a lot of questions. I would say that the single biggest issue in the area is that this is a very, very, very big mine that's very close to a city, and people are concerned about the loss of a local lake that's being used for recreation. They're concerned about air quality in the region, and they're also concerned about whether or not this is consistent with the branding of Kamloops as Canada's home or capital of tournaments. And so they're legitimate concerns, and the company is doing what it can to address them. We'll see where this process goes, and we'll see how this plays out over the years ahead. Still a lot of work to be done by the company, and still a lot of issues to be addressed to meet the needs of the local residents there.
Right. All right, thank you very much. And this will end the first segment of our constituency report. And after the break, we will look forward to welcoming Isabel McKenzie, the BC Seniors Advocate.
Welcome back. We recently held an MLA town on healthcare, and we were very fortunate that Isabel McKenzie, BC's seniors advocate, was able to participate as a panelist and give us a presentation about her role. As the seniors advocate, Isabel monitors and analyzes seniors issues and issues in BC and senior services, and makes recommendations to government and service providers on ways to improve services and address systemic issues. Isabel has over 20 years of experience working with seniors in home care, licensed care, community services, and volunteer services. Isabel led BC's largest not-for-profit agency, servicing over 6,000 seniors annually. In this work, Isabel led the pioneering of a new model for dementia care that has become a best practice nationally. Isabel's been widely recognized for her work and was named BC's CEO of the Year for the non-profit sector and nominated as a provincial healthcare hero. Welcome, Isabel, and thank you so much for joining us here today on Constituency Report.
My pleasure, Andrew.
Thank you. My first question, well, I have a number of questions. My first question is for the listeners. What is what is your mandate as the seniors advocate in British Columbia?
Well, as you spoke to in your introduction, we have a legislated duty and obligation. So there's a piece of legislation called the Seniors Advocate Act, and it outlines our areas of responsibility, which include health care, but also housing, transportation, income supports, and personal supports for seniors. And across those 5 areas, we perform about 4 main functions, which is to inform seniors and their families about the services that are available to them, to monitor the services that seniors are receiving in this province, to analyze systemic issues that affect seniors and their family members, and to report to the Ministry of Health and to the service providers on ways they can make improvements to the services they provide to seniors.
Well, thanks. Are there some common misconceptions of issues that face seniors that you might be able to help us with understand?
Well, I think one of the common misconceptions about seniors is that they're all the same and they're all headed to the nursing home and that they all have dementia. And in fact, what happens when you look at the information and the actual data that's available, you find that in fact seniors are as different from each other as everybody is when they're 45 years old. You find that the vast majority of seniors, 93% of seniors, live completely independently on their own and on their own dime. Even when you look at over age 85, only 15% of seniors are living in residential care. That's over the age of 85. And you find that when you look at the 50,000 British Columbians diagnosed with dementia at any given time, the first surprise is 19% of them are actually under the age of 65. And the other surprise is that 80% of people over 85 do not have dementia. So the statistical odds are, if you are a senior or approaching your senior years in British Columbia, that you're going to live on your own and without dementia for all of your life.
Well, that's very good news as I am beginning to enter my senior years. The Seniors Advocate role is relatively new. It's a couple of years old, my understanding, and perhaps you can tell us what the main issues you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis are now in this new role.
Well, the part of the evolution of the office was building it and finding our feet and determining what exactly we were going to focus on and how we were going to structure ourselves. And so on any given day, we are receiving phone calls and information from the public. We have a 1-800 number. And we are doing things as simple as helping them get safer shelter aid for elderly renters applications through with BC Housing, or we are telling them about grants that are available. Frankly, a lot of things that constituency offices of MLAs might deal with. So we're answering those questions. We are also continuing to monitor services. So we issued our first monitoring report earlier this year, and we will be doing that every year. And so we're constantly going out to service providers to get the latest information on what is the wait time for a residential care bed, how many handy dart clients are there, what's the refusal rate for handy dart drives, what are the levels of income support out there relative to what the rate of inflation is, those kinds of things. So we're doing that monitoring function. And then we are, at any given time, working on 1 or 2, sometimes 3 different reports on some of the systemic issues. And so we've done a few already around caregiver distress, around some issues in residential care, some issues around housing. Right now we're working on a resident-on-resident aggression review. We're looking at the home support program. We're looking at some of the information from the Directory of Residential Care.
So can seniors call your office directly, or must they be referred to your office, or how do they receive information and referrals from your office? Do you have some insight into how seniors can contact you or your office?
Yeah, there's many ways. They can call our office directly. We have a 1-800 number, which I think is going to be shown on your screen. And that is answered by a live person, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, and it will continue to be answered by a live person. We also, of course, have a website. That information will also be on the screen, and people can email us, and there's a form they can fill out if they want to get issues. And we have the proverbial Facebook and Twitter as well.
Well, that's wonderful. It's especially wonderful that we have a live person that you can talk to. 'Cause there's nothing more frustrating in my mind is if you are a senior wishing to go this, press X. And
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Are you able to tell us a little more about the recent reports from the Office of Seniors Advocate? You mentioned, for example, the January 2016 report on monitoring senior services and the March 2016 BC Residential Care Facilities Directory. Are you able to expand upon what these reports found and showed?
Yes. Now, I'll start with the most recent one, which is the Residential Care Directory. And so what we've done is we have compiled in one directory in a standardized format information about 292 publicly funded facilities in this province. So you can go and find out how many beds they have, how many are publicly subsidized, how many are privately funded, what their direct hours, funded hours of care are, what their incident reports have been, what their quality indicators from the Canadian Institute of Health Information are, what kinds of additional charges they have in their facility. So it's all there in one spot. And so it's the first time that's been brought together. Almost everything in there has been publicly available, but you had to search all over hither and yon to get it. And so one of the first things that came out of that, bringing all the information together, was the revelation that 82% of the facilities that we have the information for are not in fact funded at the 3.36 hours of care per day per resident that is the provincial guideline. I was very surprised to find it that high. It's the average is 3.11, so it's not off by a huge margin on average, but there's quite a spread. There's some facilities as low as 2.2%, or pardon me, 2.2 hours per day per resident, and some are up around 3.6, 3.7. So certainly I think we're going to be having a conversation with government about what can we do to bring all of our care facilities up to the provincial guideline, because you don't have a choice on publicly funded care facilities where you go. You are required to go to the first available bed. And you pay the same amount. Everybody pays 80% of their after-tax income for staying in residential care, yet you're not getting the same level of funded care in every facility. So that's been an interesting outcome from the Directory of Care. We did a report on caregiver distress, something that probably you hear from your constituents quite a bit. Many of them will be caregivers. And some interesting things that came out of that was, first of all, looking at the data around the health assessments of people in our home support program, for example. We found, on the one hand, we are keeping people at home who would otherwise be in residential care, because we found that about half our home support clients have the same clinical profile as somebody in residential care. But keeping them at home is only possible because of the unpaid caregiver in their life. And so we need to support that unpaid caregiver, who's overwhelmingly a family member that they're living with. And if we don't, then those 15,000 people are going to flood our care facilities and our emergency departments. And we found a high level of distress. 30% are distressed. It's one of the highest rates in Canada. And we found that when we looked further into the data, that the programs we have available to bring relief to caregivers weren't being utilized to any large extent by our distressed caregivers, and there were waiting lists for them. And so I think that we're able to draw a little bit of a roadmap for government to say, look, we may not realize what's happening out there, but we need these caregivers to care for these people. Here's their health profile. They can't live on their own. They're in distress, which means they're ready to tool down from their caregiving duties. We have these programs for them, but they're not getting connected to them. In part, some of it will be because of waiting lists, but some of it will also because we've got a huge communication issue out there in the care system of connecting people with the care supports that are available to them.
You're absolutely right. This is an issue that people bring to the MLA office as an issue that they are frustrated with and wanting to know how they can cope, etc. The reports that you outlined, I know they're available on the website. Are they available in hard copy if people want them to? And
yes, anybody can phone my office and we will send them a hard copy in the post.
Oh, that's wonderful. You have also put together a council of advisors, and I believe there's 30 BC seniors representatives from all across the province. And perhaps you can tell me what the council does, how they advise you, and if someone wants to be on it, are they appointed or do they apply, or what's the process involved?
Well, the Council of Advisors in the legislation for the Seniors Advocate, it speaks to the advocate's ability to appoint a Council of Advisors. And I was very committed to having that Council of Advisors be seniors. I think it's very important to keep grounded in the work that you do constantly to be reminded of the voice of seniors. So we set about an open application process. So we invited applications from anybody in British Columbia. I think there were about 400 applications. I asked the Council of Senior Citizens Organizations, called COSCO without the T, to vet the applications and to recommend 30 members using a criteria of equal representation by geography, by ethnic background, by socioeconomic profiles, by gender, et cetera, et cetera. And so they brought forward a list of 30 people who were appointed. They are 3-year terms. They're a bit staggered in the beginning in order to ideally have a third every year replaced. So it's been, they've just completed their inaugural year. So when there are vacancies in particular areas, we will put out a call for people to apply for that vacancy.
Okay. And one always wonders when you have an office like the advocacy, your seniors advocacy office, whether or not the reports you produce are received well by government. And presumably you have some examples of how government has responded to the calls you've made in the report. And so the overall question is, do you think the reports are being listened to? And if so, do you have some examples of where perhaps government has responded and perhaps some examples where perhaps there needs to be a little more work before the response is done to the extent that you think it should be done?
So I think government is listening. I think people have to remember the government created this office, so they're obviously interested in hearing in a more direct way about issues that affect seniors. I think some of what we have done, I think all of it's been listened to. Some of it's been acted on. Some of it hasn't been acted on yet, is how I like to think about it. And I haven't given up trying to get some action on some of our reports of the past. So an example of where the government has acted is recent changes to the Community Care and Assisted Living Act. And that came out of a review we did of the health records of people in residential care and people in home support, in home care. And it came about because when I was going to the various care facilities throughout the province, I would inevitably see in one of the facilities somebody who shouldn't be there. We did a review. Lo and behold, we found that some people were there that shouldn't be there. Lo and behold, we found that there were things in assisted living that were forcing people out of assisted living into community care, and the province has remedied that.
That's wonderful. So it's thank you so much, Isabel, for taking the time out of your schedule to be here on Constituency Report. I very much appreciate your willingness to be part of this. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Andrew.